Step into living Rome. Close your eyes for a moment and let me place you on warm stone. You are not looking at ruins. You are here when Rome is still breathing, when the streets are crowded, the temples still smoke with offerings, and the empire's news travels faster than you think, carried by merchants, soldiers, and gossip. We are in the high age of imperial Rome, when the city is the nerve center of a Mediterranean world. Grain ships cross from North Africa, wine moves up from Campania, marble arrives from Greece, and soldiers march to rivers at the edge of maps. Rome looks eternal from a distance. Up close, it survives day by day, wound by wound. You and I will walk together as if you have a hand on my shoulder. You will hear the clatter of carts on basalt, the chanting from a shrine at a street corner, and the sharp intake of breath from a patient who knows the next moment will hurt. When I say physician, do not imagine quiet rooms and clean white cloth. Imagine a crowded stairwell, a smoky workshop, a bathhouse packed with bodies, a military camp where blood steams on cold ground. I will speak to you the way I would speak to a friend who insisted on coming with me, honestly, closely, and with the small details that make a day feel real. This is the world where a doctor is not only a healer, but also a witness. Medicine in Rome sits at the intersection of engineering and superstition, wealth and hunger, war and trade. Aqueducts bring water from distant hills, but cramped tenements breed fevers. Senators fund temples, but the poor still sleep 4 to a room. Legions guard borders at rivers you have never seen, and the injuries they bring home reshape the city's workshops and hospitals. If you stay with me, you will see Rome's geography as a living system. The Tiber that feeds and floods, the roads that pull strangers into the capital, and the frontier rivers where the empire bleeds. Now come, keep your eyes open, keep your stomach steady, and listen closely, because in Rome, life and death can change at a single street corner. Channel note: if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe and like this video. It directly supports the work, and it helps us bring you the next story. Chapter 1. The City That Never Stops Bleeding. Picture dawn on the 7 hills. From high ground, you can trace the spine of the city, the forum's temples and basilicas, the slope of the Palatine, where power sleeps behind guarded doors, the sweep of the campus marches, where men drill and politicians perform. But you and I start where most Romans actually live, down in the Subura, the crowded valley of workshops, taverns, and tall apartment blocks called insulae. Here, the streets are narrow enough that neighbors could shake hands across windows. Laundry hangs like flags. The air is a layered thing. Smoke from cooking fires, sour wine from taverns, damp from yesterday's rain, trapped between walls. You feel the city's pulse in your feet because everything is built tightly, stacked upward, always one accident away from a fall, a fire, a crushed limb. If I were a physician here, you would notice I work early. The poor cannot afford to wait until later. Later becomes worse. A mother meets us on a stairwell that smells of wet wood and boiled cabbage. Her child's belly is swollen, his eyes too large for his face. You can hear it in his breathing, not a dramatic illness, not an epic wound, but the slow violence of hunger and parasites. I kneel where the light is best, not because I am sentimental, but because that is how you see truth. Skin color, moisture in the eyes, the way the ribs move. In Rome, diagnosis often begins with listening to the body, and also to the neighborhood. Is the building damp? Is the alley full of smoke? Is the water from a fountain nearby, or from a shared bucket that tastes of old wood? Now follow me toward the river. You'll see how Rome changes by the block. One corner smells of fish, another of tanned leather, another of incense drifting from a household shrine. Above us, aqueducts stride over hills, stone arches carrying cold flow from distant springs. Aqua Marcia, famous for its freshness. Aqua Claudia, massive and proud. They feed public fountains, bath complexes, and the private pipes of the wealthy. Yet down here, buckets and cisterns still matter. The poor take what they can and hope it stays sweet. The city's engineering is extraordinary, but the distribution of comfort is not fair, and medicine is forced to work inside that inequality. You ask what a Roman doctor carries. Let me show you. In my satchel, there are bronze and iron tools, scalpels for cutting, probes for exploring wounds, hooks to lift tissue, forceps for splinters, a small saw for bone. There are linen bandages and wool for padding. There are jars, honey to soothe and protect, vinegar to clean, oil to soften skin, resin and pitch for sealing. There are dried herbs, fennel, mint, rue, some genuinely useful, others mostly tradition. There is also the most important tool, judgment. In a world with limited pain relief and no reliable cure for many infections, every treatment is weighed against risk. Cutting can save a life. Cutting can also kill. By midday, we reached the Tiber Island, a long stone ship moored in the river. Romans tell a story that a sacred serpent came here and chose the place. Whatever the legend, the reality is practical. The island is easier to isolate, and isolation matters. At its center stands the sanctuary of Aesculapius, god of healing. It is half temple, half hospital. You would see the sick sleeping under porticos, hoping for divine dreams, while attendants wash sheets and carry bowls of water. Faith is not separate from the practice here. It is part of the system. A man offers a small clay model of a leg as a promise. A woman whispers a vow if her child survives. And in the same space, I clean a wound and tie a bandage because gods may be honored, but bacteria, though unnamed, still do their work. And yes, you would hear famous names. Many physicians are Greek, trained in traditions that describe health through balance: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile, and sickness as imbalance. Some lecture as if the body were a philosophical argument. Others are blunt craftsmen. They talk about the smell of a wound, about whether swelling is hard like stone or soft like dough. In the right circles, you might hear of Galen, a young doctor making a name with daring dissections and sharper opinions. In the streets, you also meet the opposite: the charlatan selling miracle powders, the healer who promises too much, the perfume seller who claims a scented oil can defeat fever. Rome is a marketplace for everything, including hope. Now walk with me into the baths, because this is where Rome reveals both its genius and its danger. The public baths are vast, echoing halls of steam, cold pools that steal your breath, mosaics underfoot, and crowds everywhere. The bath is hygiene, social club, gossip exchange, and political stage. It is also a perfect place for sickness to travel. Men share strigils to scrape sweat and oil from skin. Barbers shave with quick blades. Wrestlers and ball players collide. You see bruises, sprains, infected cuts, fungal rashes from shared floors. A doctor earns coin here treating the senator's aching joints and the porter's torn shoulder on the same day, because water and heat are democratic, even when society is not. In the afternoon, we pass the Forum Boreum near the river, where cattle and commerce have mingled for centuries. The smell is thick, Animal sweat, blood, trampled straw. Butcher's knives slip, hooves crush feet. A worker drops a load and cracks a shoulder. In Rome, injury is not rare. It is normal. Even entertainment draws blood. Near the amphitheater districts, you can find men nursing wounds from training schools, and sometimes you are called to treat a gladiator whose value is measured like a racehorse. You learn quickly that Roman violence is not only on battlefields, it's baked into labor and spectacle, into the way bodies are used. As evening comes, oil lamps flicker in doorways, and you smell fear as much as smoke. Fires race through wooden beams and crowded rooms. When flames rise, they do not respect class. The vigils, the city's fire watch, run with hooks, buckets, and discipline, but they cannot reverse panic. After a fire, you treat burns, smoke-choked lungs, and crushed limbs from collapsing staircases. If I were a physician in Rome, you would learn the first lesson quickly. The empire is built on stone, but it runs on flesh, and flesh always needs tending. Chapter 2. When the air turns against you. Let me take you to a year when Rome feels suddenly smaller, when the world's roads, ports, and markets stop being symbols of strength and start behaving like open doors for catastrophe. It begins quietly, a cough that lingers, a fever that returns, a rash that spreads like spilled ink on skin. Traders arriving from the east bring silk and spices and also something else, carried in breath and sweat, hidden until it is too late. People whisper that soldiers have returned from campaigns beyond the Euphrates with sickness in their camps. The city has always lived with disease, but now it behaves differently, faster, hotter, more relentless. Later, historians will name it. In the moment, it is simply the thing that empties streets and fills beds. As a physician, my days stop having ordinary shape. You and I move through crowds that are not celebrating but searching for cures, for blame, for meaning. The rich retreat to villas and private gardens. The poor cannot retreat. In the Subura, the sick lie on straw with no space to breathe clean air. In the markets, vendors argue over whether a fever is a sign of bad food, bad water, or bad gods. Priests lead processions. Incense thickens. Some households nail amulets to doorframes. Others place bowls of herbs at thresholds. Everyone wants a boundary between themselves and the invisible. We spend long hours on Tiber Island, where the sanctuary of Aesculapius fills beyond capacity. The porticos become wards. The steps become waiting rooms. You see attendants mixing barley water, cooling cloths in the shade, washing the sweat from foreheads that burn like ovens. You also see the limits of ancient care. We can soothe, clean, and support. We can encourage rest and hydration. We can relieve pain with poppy-based preparations when we have them. But we cannot cure what we do not fully understand. And that truth is heavy in your hands when a patient's breathing turns shallow and fast. You ask what we actually do when bodies begin to fail in great numbers. We do what humans always do under pressure. We triage, not with modern language, but with hard decisions. Who has a chance if we keep them hydrated, cooled, and watched? Who is already slipping into delirium with breath that comes in broken pieces? We separate families not because we are cruel, but because we learn what closeness costs. In a culture that honors household bonds, this separation is one of the deepest wounds. You see people bargain with the gods, with doctors, with time itself. Roman medical theory gives us a framework, but theory does not stop death. Doctors argue about corrupted humors and poisoned air. Some blame miasma. the idea that foul smells carry sickness. And you can understand why. Because the city's odors are real and heavy. Open drains, crowded latrines, smoke trapped between buildings. Others suspect contamination in water, food, or contact. In practice, we clean, we wash, we burn sulfur and herbs, we open windows, we move the living away from the dead. We learn quickly that crowds are dangerous and that fear can be as contagious as fever. Now walk with me through the city's infrastructure, because that is where you see Rome's paradox. The aqueducts still run, the fountains still pour, latrines still flush, carried by constant water into sewers that meet the ancient cloaca maxima. Rome is not ignorant of sanitation. In fact, it is one of the cleanest large cities the ancient world ever built. But sanitation is not safety when an illness moves person to person. The very success of Rome, dense living, constant travel, crowded public life, becomes the engine that drives the outbreak. The roads that feed the city also feed the disease. During the worst weeks, sound itself changes. In normal times, you hear laughter and argument. Now you hear coughing everywhere. You hear carts at strange hours carrying bodies wrapped in cloth. You hear the hammering of carpenters making more beers. You smell smoke from funeral pyres because burial space runs out and fear accelerates the work. Some families keep their dead at home longer than is safe because they cannot bear to let go. And you see how grief becomes another risk. Even the army feels the change. Rome's legions are not only on distant frontiers, they are a reservoir of manpower and order. When sickness hits the camps, it weakens the state's muscle. Rumors of war on the Danube reach us with sharper edges. Tribes test the borders when they sense the empire coughing. The emperor, Marcus Aurelius, known for philosophy and duty, must keep grain moving, tax revenues flowing, and troop strength intact, all while Rome's people look for someone to blame. At times, politics turns ugly, and suspicion moves like a second plague through neighborhoods. In the middle of this, you would see a kind of courage that is easy to romanticize and hard to live. Slaves carry water to strangers. Women who have lost children still help wash the sick. Doctors keep working even as colleagues vanish from the streets, dead or fled. I would not claim heroism, I would claim fatigue. The kind of fatigue that sits in your bones and makes you forget what day it is. You learn to eat quickly, to sleep lightly, to breathe shallowly, without thinking when you step into a room that smells of sickness. And then, because this is Rome, life continues beside death. A magistrate still demands paperwork. A creditor still wants his coin. A religious festival still tries to happen, smaller and tenser, as if performance could stabilize reality. The empire's machinery does not stop, it grinds through loss. When the wave finally loosens its grip, it does not feel like victory. It feels like waking up in a city that has aged in a season. There are empty beds, shuttered shops, and faces you expect to see that never reappear. As we leave the island one evening, the Tiber reflects the last light like a blade, and you understand the second lesson of Roman medicine. In a world this connected, the greatest threat can arrive without a sword. Chapter 3. The Frontier, where Rome meets the world. You might think a physician's life stays inside city walls. In Rome, it doesn't. The empire is a web, and sooner or later it pulls you toward an edge. After the plague, war feels less like distant news and more like a necessity. Messages arrive from the north. Pressure on the Danube frontier, raids, crossings, a chain of conflict that historians will call the Marcomannic Wars. The river is not just a line on a map. It is a moving boundary, wide, cold, and quick, with forests beyond it that Romans describe as both threatening and endless. To protect the heart, Rome sends its legions. And legions, as you'll learn, do not move without doctors. So imagine we leave the city by the Via Flaminia, one of Rome's great roads, engineered to carry boots, wagons, and orders. You feel the empire in the road itself. Hard-packed layers, drainage ditches, milestones that measure distance like a heartbeat. We cross the Apennines, where fog clings to pines, then descend toward wider plains where farms spread out like quilts. At way stations, mansions, we find fresh animals, news, and the inevitable injuries of travel. Thrown riders, sprained ankles, infected blisters from wet sandals. Travel is glamorous only in poems. In real life, it is a slow test of the body. Eventually, we reach the Danube provinces, where Roman towns cling to the river like nails. You can tell when you're near a camp before you see it, because the landscape changes. Cleared lines of sight, timber cut, roads straightened, supply depots clustered. Then the fort appears, a rectangle of discipline carved into earth. Ditches, ramparts, gates aligned with roads inside like a grid. The camp is a city in miniature, designed for speed and control. Inside is the valetudinarium, the military hospital. It is not a temple. It is a building for work, wards, storage, a place to clean instruments, a courtyard for light. Rome has learned from centuries of war that organized care keeps soldiers alive and keeps the army functional. You watch me unpack tools and you understand something that cities hide. The body is a machine that breaks in predictable ways under violence. A soldier arrives with a pilum wound, the heavy javelin designed not only to pierce, but to ruin shields and armor. The entry hole is small. The damage beneath can be wide. Another comes with a slash from a curved blade. Another with an arrow embedded near the shoulder. We cut clothing away, not pull it. We probe carefully for splinters of bone. We use forceps to grip metal, and if the arrow has barbs, we must decide whether to push it through or enlarge the wound to free it. Every choice is a trade, more cutting now or more infection later. And then there are injuries that are not weapons at all. Crushed toes from marching, fevers from swampy ground, stomach sickness from sour rations, frostbite when winter bites early. War is less about glorious battles than about attrition. Skin rubbed raw, lungs strained, sleep stolen. The enemy is not only the man across the river, it is also mud, cold, hunger, and time. You ask for battles, so let me be precise. Fighting here is rarely a single cinematic moment. It is patrols, ambushes, hurried defenses at crossings, negotiations that fail, and winter camps where hunger becomes an officer. Geography shapes everything. The Danube is a supply route and a threat. Forests hide enemies and also hide your scouts. Mud slows wagons and forces soldiers to carry more on their backs. In summer, insects turn a shallow cut into a festering pit. In winter, the cold stiffens joints and makes wounds heal badly, if they heal at all. When a clash happens, the aftermath is my true battlefield. Orderlies bring men on stretchers, wooden frames with straps, into triage lines. Those who can walk are told to wait. Those who cannot are placed closest. We stop bleeding first. We set broken bones. We clean and dress wounds. We cauterize when we must, using heated metal. That smells like burnt meat, a smell you never forget. We keep instruments as clean as possible, wiping with wine or vinegar, boiling when there is time. We change bandages. We fight infection with cleanliness and luck. Along the frontier, you meet people Rome labels as barbarians, but reality is more complicated. There are traders who speak both worlds' languages. There are local communities who supply the army and adopt Roman habits. There are allied fighters who share the camp and bring their own healing practices, plants from forests, poultices made of bark and fat. Borders are gradients, not walls. A paved road becomes a track. A milestone becomes a scar on a tree. The farther you go, the more you understand Rome's power as something practical, logistics, discipline, and the ability to move supplies and people where they need to be. At night, the stars are brighter than in Rome, and the river's sound is constant. In those hours, you and I talk quietly, and I tell you another truth. Roman medicine is not just about healing individuals. It is one of the tools that keeps the empire running. A soldier who returns to duty is a political outcome. A cohort that stays healthy is a strategic advantage. There is also an invisible geography you only notice when you try to save lives. The supply routes, bandages, vinegar, needles, and drugs do not appear by wish. They come by wagon from Italian workshops, by riverboat along the Danube, by pack animal over muddy tracks. When a bridge is damaged or a convoy is ambushed, medicine becomes scarcity overnight. You watch officers argue over rations and you realize a painful truth. A soldier's survival can depend as much on logistics as on my hands. When the campaign season ends, we march back south with wagons heavier than when we left, filled with wounded, with stories, with the kind of experience that changes how you see every street in Rome. You can build arches and write laws, but on the frontier, you learn what holds those things up. Bodies, patched and bandaged, doing the work again tomorrow. Chapter 4. Return to the marble and what remains. When we finally see Rome again, the first thing you notice is not the monuments. It's the smell, smoke, bread, river damp, human density. The second thing you notice is how the city absorbs everything. Soldiers return with scars and foreign coins. Merchants arrive with new goods and new rumors. Refugees slip into the Subura looking for work. Rome does not pause to process. It continues like a river swallowing tributaries. As a physician, I return changed. After the frontier, I cannot walk through the forum without hearing the camp sounds under the city's noise. A limping veteran asking for help is not an abstract case. He is a reminder of the Danube's cold mud. A child with a fever is not only a household tragedy, he is a sign of how quickly sickness can spread in tight rooms. Rome's geography becomes a medical map in my head. I know where the air is stagnant between tall insulae, where the baths are most crowded at peak hours, where the water tastes cleanest, where smoke hangs lowest. You and I go back to the places you now recognize. The Tiber Island sanctuary still fills because Rome never runs out of illness. Offerings line the walls, little clay legs, arms, eyes, even tiny models of internal organs. Nearby, the warehouses at Ostia, the port at the mouth of the Tiber, continue to swallow grain ships that have crossed dangerous seas. That grain feeds the city, and you understand another link. Nutrition is medicine, and supply is survival. A delayed shipment can mean hunger. Hunger means weakness. Weakness invites sickness. In Rome, health is not only personal, it is political and geographic. We walk the long, straight Via Appia for a while, past tombs and monuments. Romans lined their roads with the dead, as if to remind travelers of the price of movement. The inscriptions are a kind of archive. A baker who died young, a child lost to fever, a soldier who served far away. In my work, those stones matter. They tell me what kills people, what ages are most vulnerable, what families fear. In a world without statistics, the road is a ledger. Back in the city, you see the medical marketplace up close. In the morning, I might be called to a senator's atrium where light bounces off polished marble. There, the illness is often chronic. Gout, indigestion, sleeplessness, the slow pains of a life spent eating too well and moving too little. The family expects discretion, they expect confidence, they expect remedies imported from far provinces, rare spices, resins, costly wines. In the afternoon, I might climb 5 flights in an insula to treat a laborer's infected cut, where the best payment is bread and the best hope is that the swelling does not turn black. The contrast is not just economic, it is physical. The rich live in airy rooms, the poor live in stacked heat. We also visit the libraries and lecture halls because Rome is not only muscle, it is memory. Knowledge travels along the same roads as legions. Greek texts are copied and debated. Anatomical arguments rage in courtyards. Some doctors insist that theory is everything. Others insist that only experience matters. The truth, as always, is both. A good physician in Rome is part philosopher, part engineer, part negotiator. You must convince families to follow advice, persuade patrons to pay, calm patients who think pain is a curse, and work alongside midwives who know childbirth better than any book. Let me tell you something that surprises many people. Roman medicine is advanced in some ways and blind in others. Surgeons can remove cataracts with a needle. They can set complex fractures. They can understand that cleanliness helps, even if they cannot see microbes. But they also operate under limits. No anesthesia as you know it, no antibiotics, no germ theory. This creates a particular mindset. Doctors become observers of patterns. We watch seasons. We note outbreaks. We learn which neighborhoods suffer most when the air is heavy in summer and which roads bring waves of new patients after a military campaign returns. And in Rome, a physician's life is never only about bodies. It is about power. The wealthy can buy privacy, imported drugs, and time. The poor bargain with what they have. Slaves often have no choice at all. Their health is an owner's investment. In that system, healing is sometimes compassion and sometimes economics, sometimes both at once. If you walked with me long enough, you would see me accept payment in coins 1 hour and in olives the next. You would see me refuse a dangerous treatment when a patron demands a miracle, and you would see me perform a painful procedure anyway when the alternative is death. As years pass, the plague becomes a scar in the city's memory. People speak of it with lowered voices, and parents tell children to wash their hands as if that alone could control fate. War continues in cycles because frontiers are never permanently quiet, and still new buildings rise. A new bath complex opens. A new temple is dedicated. Rome heals itself the way it heals bodies, by closing over wounds and moving forward even when the underlying weakness remains. One more thing you would notice if you stayed with me, how much of medicine is writing and memory. I keep notes on wax tablets, symptoms, treatments tried, outcomes, because Rome is big enough that patterns matter. Apprentices copy recipes for salves and poultices, and they learn to recognize danger signs the way a sailor reads weather. In a city where knowledge can travel from Alexandria to Rome in a single season, the best tool is often a disciplined mind that records what it sees. If you ask me what I would remember most if I were a physician in Rome, it would not be marble or triumph. It would be faces. The boy on the stairwell in the Subura, the woman who whispered prayers while I stitched her husband's skin, the soldier who stared at the ceiling after we removed a shattered arrowhead, the old man who thanked me for easing pain even when I could not change the ending. Rome teaches you that history is made in palaces, yes, but it is endured in rooms you will never see in statues. And now, as we step back out of the city's noise and into your own world, keep this image, an empire of roads and rivers, of aqueducts and armies, held together by ordinary bodies trying to last one more day. Closing. If you enjoyed this journey through living Rome, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. It tells the platform that you want more stories like this, and it helps us bring you the next chapter of history to you.